Shalom to everyone. Shalom, shalom. Welcome into the house. Grace and mercy and peace to all of those who are in the body of the Mashiach. We say shalom to the 12 tribes of Yasharal scattered to the four corners of the earth. And we also say grace and peace to all sojourners, those who are born and grafted into the body of the Mashiach, the body of our Messiah, the house of Elohim, and in the nation of Yasharal. And so we thank him on tonight, and we certainly welcome each and every one of you. We say, come on into the house. Everything is going to be all right, and we're going to go further into his word, and in Jeremiah 17 and 15, Jeremiah 17:15, he says, "Behold, they say unto me, where is the word of Yahuwah? Let it come now." So that's what we want to hear. Is we want to hear the word on tonight. So. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Getting better. Trying to blow that shofar. Getting better. So thankful on today for his thoughtfulness unto us in this day, in this hour. And my prayer is that we are getting stronger as the days go by. Our faith is stronger, not weaker. Even if we have the faith of the grain of a mustard seed, it said we'd be able to move mountains. And that is speaking of pure faith. We want our faith to be pure. And that should be stronger. There should be no doubt when we can go to the Bible and read it in the Bible and see it in the Holy Scriptures, the very words of our Rabbi, our Messiah, speaking to us from heaven. You say, what do you mean he spoke to us from heaven? And we'll see that on tonight, because he even said, our Messiah in his teaching, he says, I'm not teaching anything of my own. He did not come with his own doctrine. Could I get a little bit more volume on here? He did not come with his own doctrine. He did not come with a new agenda. He was given the word, and he was given the plan, and he knew the plan as he was here walking on earth. He knew the plan. It is a grave mistake. It's going to prove deadly in the end. A grave mistake to think that our Messiah, the only begotten of the Father, came here on earth and changed his Father's agenda. I mean, just the thought of that on face value is absurd. He would have been totally out of the will of our Father if he would have came to earth and had a 3.5-year ministry to change everything that his Father had given to the nation. So all that the Most High Yah gave to Yasharal, and then he sends his Son to turn that upside down, so you don't believe anything that the Father said, but then you're going to come into a new doctrine and a new teaching. That on itself, at face value, is absurd. And it should really alarm people to hear such teaching that Mashiach has come with something that is different than what his father gave to the nation. The world is turned upside down, and all nations are going to be judged. All nations are going to be judged. There's not many that's going to see, hear, and understand what's coming here at the end. You heard me say before, looking at all the world religions, and the largest one is Christianity, which is 2.5 billion people. But if your understanding and through your lens of perspective is that he's going to come and get all of those people, 2.5 billion people, then you're walking in error. You're walking in darkness. There's absolutely no way that's going to happen, because one thing, and you're going to hear me say this more frequently, there's one thing that the Christian church hates Israel. And you're going to hear me say that more and more. You're going to hear me say it more and more, that the Christian church and Christianity hates Israel. Now, I know a lot of people are going to think, I don't know where he's getting that from. I don't know where he's getting that from, because what we call as the Christian right, they're the ones that and this nation is giving the nation of Israel upwards of billions of dollars annually. Annually, it's going over there. So how could he make a statement like that? Well, when it's opened up to you who Israel is, and he reveals it to you, and then you see how reality is, it'll open your eyes, open your understanding. Because many people who call themselves Christians are in fact murderers. They are in fact murderers. That's just the history. There's some things that's going to be said that some people just aren't going to like. But if you don't like hearing it from me, you sure ain't going to like it when the Messiah comes. You sure won't like it. Because one thing that he stands for, and that is justice. He stands for justice. In fact, you can't be in his spirit and not like justice. Anybody who reads Proverbs, and I know we're reading Proverbs, you read through Proverbs, it talks about justice. He don't like it when there's injustice. Where there's injustice, he don't like it. He wants justice. So when you see a nation that is unjust and you think they're going to get away with that, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's time to come out of the darkness, out of the shade, out of the shadows, and having your mind clouded. It's time to come out of that. But I want to go to start this off in John Yahuchanan chapter 14. And I know what our foundational scriptures are, but John 14, Yahuchanan 14, verse 21. I think that's where we'll start. Yahuchanan 14 and verse number 21. And it reads, "He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me." Now, if you would to scroll up in the same chapter, verse 15, it says, "If ye love me, what are you going to do? You're going to keep my commandments." That is the show of love towards Mashiach, Christ, they call Christ, Mashiach. Your show of love to him is if you're obedient to his commandments. That's how he knows if you love him or not. And the ones who are supposed to guard against those commandments, you know who the ones who are supposed to guard those commandments? In Isaiah chapter chapter 8 and verse number 16. Here's the ones that are supposed to guard the commandments. He says, "Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples." So those who are his disciples would be those who guard his commandments. They're the ones that protects it. They're the ones that stands up and say, "Oh no, if you love him, you'll keep his commandments. These are the commandments. This is the law. This is what he spoke, even from Mount Sinai." The reason why we're in the condition that we're in is because if I had a piece of paper here, I would just kind of ball it up like this and toss it. Because that's what they did. They just took his commandments and his law and just discarded it like it was just trash. Just discard it. Throw it away. And fell into idolatry. Gross idolatry. Do you know it was prophesied? It was prophesied where you would find Israel. It was prophesied where you would find Israel. You would find Israel worshiping wood and stone. It says that in Deuteronomy by Moshe. It also reveals that in Ezekiel. It talks about it. So you got more than one witness, because you got to have 2 to 3 witnesses in order to build doctrine. And so it's in multiple places in the prophets where Israel was going to be, or Yasharal was going to be in or worshiping wood and stone. And so when you figure out what wood and stone is, that's where you're going to find Israel. Because Israel has always, Yasharal has always fallen into idolatry. That was a part of them. But in Isaiah 8:16, he says, "Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples." So the disciples are the ones that are supposed to guard. The disciples are the one that's supposed to have his law sealed in them. Now, I find it troubling for those who are followers of Christ, Mashiach, those who follow him and disregard his commandments. So back to John 14:21, that's where we were. "He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be" what? "Loved of my Father." So how do you think the Father feels when you have those who claim to be his children and just totally discarding his commandments? And then we hear a lot of this, he understands and he'll forgive you, and he's not going to hold that against you, and do the best that you can. And we hear all of this when the only way you're going to be loved by the Father is if you keep his commandments. That's how you're in my relationship with him is on display when I'm obedient unto his word. My relationship with him is not built on my emotion. Because we read that the other day, right? I mean, through many tears and weeping and everything, and even with Esau and how he sought repentance with bitter tears, and it didn't move him, did not move him. With us now, we see a lot of emotion. We say, oh, Spirit's moving on him. Sometimes I wonder what the Most High is thinking. What is he thinking? Because you have some folks that will be very emotional and turn around and walk right out of the building and sin. And we say, oh, didn't they come through? Come through with what? I mean, our Messiah said, the world is going to know that you're my disciples if you have love one to another. The world's going to see you if you have that love one to another. That's a commandment. So you got some folks that will get caught up in tears and emotion and prayer, and then they walk right out and hate their brother. And somebody who hates their brother is what? A murderer. Oh, didn't that murderer come through? Oh, man, we had a good time. Because he says here, and he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him and will manifest myself to him. Now listen to that. Listen to what he said. Many people who say they know Christ or Mashiach don't know him. They know a Christ, but not this one. Because I would not lie to you and say there's only one Christ. There is not. This book tells you there's not just one Christ. In fact, he said it. He said there'll be false Christs and false prophets that will deceive many. They'll show great signs and wonders, and if it's possible, they'll deceive who? The very elect. False Christs and false prophets. If it's possible, they'll deceive the very elect. So he says here, I'm going to manifest myself to him. To who? I'm going to manifest myself to that one that keepeth my commandments. Let's look at the top now. He that hath my commandments and keepeth them. And then you go down to the bottom of that verse. I will manifest myself to him. I'm going to manifest myself to the one that hath and keepeth my commandments. So what if you got somebody that doesn't believe in his commandments, is not keeping his commandments? If he manifests himself to them and they're disobedient to his commandments and his words, the Christ that they see is not the real Christ. It's not the real one. Somebody's wrong somewhere. Somebody's wrong somewhere. Because you got a Christ that taught the commandments and taught his disciples to guard them and keep them. and sent his disciples out. You got that Christ. Then you have another Christ where they say he's the end of the law. The law stopped there. There is no more law after Christ came. Well, which Christ told you that? Because the Christ of this book said heaven and earth would what? Pass away before anything is taken out of the law. I wonder why you don't hear too much preaching on that. I wonder why we don't hear preaching on that on the first day of the week. Heaven and earth's not going to pass away until everything in the law is fulfilled. Heaven and earth's not going to pass away till everything in the prophets is fulfilled. Well, why don't you hear that? I think we hear more of plant a seed offering. Oh, you're going to have a miracle. You watch it, you're going to have a miracle. I see a miracle coming your way. Most High told me, sister, you're going to be blessed. Your blessing is coming next week. Huh? What kind of Christ is that? That almost sounds like Santa Christ, don't it? Santa Christ is watching you. He sees your good and your bad. What does it say? He knows if you've been good. He knows if you've been bad. So you better watch out. You better watch out for that Santa Christ. So let's look at verse number 22 now. Yahudah saith unto him, not Iscariot, Rabbi. Now listen to this question he asked. Listen to this question. Rabbi, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself unto us and not unto the world? How is it, and these are his disciples, how is it that you're going to manifest and show yourself unto us, but the world's not going to see you? How is it that we get to see your manifestation and revelation, but the world doesn't? Why is it such a select few that's going to see it and not the whole world? Because the whole world can't see it. Do you know those who are following in the steps of Christ are very few? We're going to come back here to this manifestation. Let's go to Isaiah 10 and 20. Isaiah 10 and 20. And it shall come to pass in that day, the remnant of Yasharal, and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob. So it's just going to be a remnant. Just a remnant. Shall no more again stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon Yahuwah, the Holy One of Yasharal. And that's going to be in what? In truth. It's going to be in truth. Because the true worshipers have to do what? Worship him in spirit and truth. So if you're not in truth, the only way that you're going to stay in here is if you're in truth. Many people are going to walk. Many people are going to leave. The only ones that's going to stay and stay upon this are those that are in truth. Verse 21, the remnant shall return, the remnant of Jacob unto the mighty Elohim. Everybody's not going to return. Now, when we want multitudes, millions, billions, we want them all, everybody return. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Do you know that in 2015, and you can research this and find this out, but in 2015, there was a report out about what the world population is going to be in 2025. And you'd be surprised of what they projected. This was back in 2015. What they projected the world population in 2025. Even before a lot of stuff that's going on now, they had already projected. And I know a lot of the teaching down through the years has been handed down. You're going to have this mass revival, then you're going to have this mass exodus. I don't know where we got. There's a reason why they taught Moses' teachings and the prophets. There's a reason why they taught the prophets and did a lot of teaching out of the prophets even in that day. We read that right in the 13th chapter of Acts. They went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. What did they do? They opened up the book of Moses. They taught from that. And then what did they do? They taught the prophets. They taught Moses and the prophets. And then after that, they looked around. Shaul, you got something to say? But that wasn't until after they taught the law and the prophets. That's what they did. They taught from the laws and the prophets. When in the 24th chapter of Luke, when our Messiah, after his resurrection, before his ascension up, he was opening their understanding. He took them back to Moses, the prophets, and Psalms, and all the things that was concerning him on his first coming and also at the end of the world. Remember, what do you mean the end of the world? Because didn't they ask him? Didn't they ask him, what shall this sign be? What shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? It wasn't his first coming because he was already there. So it wasn't his first coming. It was talking about his second coming. What is this? What is a sign of thy second coming, the end of the world? When are all these things going to come to pass? And our Messiah affirmed things written by the prophets. If you look down and read what he said, he was affirming the things written by the prophets. So even when you look at the first coming is in the prophets. The second return, when he returns and sets up his kingdom, that's in the prophets as well. So why don't we hear more about that? Why don't we hear more about the teachings of the prophets and the condition of the world and how things are going to be when he comes and returns to set up his kingdom? Oh, I didn't know he was going to set up his kingdom. Well, that's in the first chapter of Acts, isn't it? He was getting ready to ascend up. They said, wait a minute before you go. Wait a minute before you go. What did they ask him? Okay, let's go to Acts. We're going to come back here. Let's go to Acts chapter 1 and verse number 6. Acts 1. Now this was after he was, he was there for 40 days. Right? I think he was there for 40 days. 40 days after his resurrection, he was there. because they from Passover or from first fruit, the week of unleavened bread. After the week of unleavened bread, you count 7 Sabbaths, and so he was there for about 40 days, and then you had the 10 days where they were waiting in Jerusalem till they were endued with power from high. So this was right. This was after he had witnessed to them. This is after he had appeared out of thin air into the midst of the apostles, right? The disciples. 2 men were on the road to Emmaus. You had all these signs. It even says that he appeared unto 400 brethren, what? At once. Now, how do you glean that? Did he appear unto 400 people, like we have 400 people in this place and he appears? Or did he appear unto 400 people, regardless of where they were, they all seen him? It could, I mean, isn't that something that he appeared unto 400 brethren at once? I mean, it's not, appearing before 400 people is not a miracle. I mean, you could stand before 400 people, but what if the 400 people weren't in one central location? And he appeared unto all of them. But anyway, this was after that. And so he's getting ready to ascend up. And they asked him in verse number 6, when they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, Rabbi, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Yasharal? And the reason why they asked him that question, because it was prophesied. It's in the prophets. They read the prophets, or they hear teaching of the prophets every Shabbat. Every Shabbat when they come together, they have the teaching on how to live right, which is in the law. They taught them how to live right, how to love your neighbor as yourself, how husbands are supposed to treat wives, how wives are supposed to treat husbands, how you're supposed to raise a family, generational teaching, generational inheritance. All of that, they taught that on the Sabbath. Families were more structured back then. There wasn't no 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old boy telling mom and dad, I ain't going to church. I ain't going to the synagogue. What do you think would happen to a 10-year-old? They tell their parents, I ain't going to the synagogue. They wouldn't even say that. I mean, that wasn't of their culture then. That's what you see today. But it was prophesied in Isaiah, the 2nd chapter. It says, children shall rule you. And you see that a lot in our homes. Most folks, most people, if you're honest, them children run the house. Tell the truth and stay in church. Tell the truth. Ain't no sense of lying up in the house. Them children run the house. But it wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like that. And you got houses now where it's not like that. Father and mother control of the house. They raise their children. You know, this book teaches us to honor our father and our mother. But you got some good Christians out there that don't believe in that commandment. Good Christians. Honor thy father and mother all the days of thy life. It'll be well with you. First commandment promise. And you got, it ain't no different than what it was in the time of the Mashiach, because they would look at that commandment, honor father and mother, but if they left a gift, if they did not honor their father and mother, but they left a gift, the priest would overlook the fact that they broke that commandment. They would overlook it because they left their gift. You know, you got some family and some people in the church, they're good supporters of the church. They give their money, their offering, and so they can break all the commandments, and the teacher, preacher gonna stand up and say, "Oh, we forgive you, we'll forgive you." That's nothing new, because they did that back in the time. All you gotta do is read Matthew 5. He breaks it down when it says you're supposed to honor your father and mother. But if somebody brings a gift, leave it at the altar, you overlook it. You see that a lot. It don't have to be honoring father and mother. It could be some other sin. You can have somebody, thou shalt not commit adultery. But you got some good tithe payers, good people that's giving offerings, and you know they're in adultery. I'm going to pray for you, Most High, Lord God of Israel, Lord God of heaven, forgive you. They did it back in that day. They do it today. Paul warned his young ministers, don't you do it for filthy lucre. Don't get caught up in money. And me personally, I don't know too many churches that's not caught up in money. I don't know too many. The reason why I say that, because I talked to a pastor. Man, I can't teach that. I believe what you're teaching. I can't teach that though. I'll lose my whole church. It's true anyway. Anyhow, I'll laugh, but it's true anyhow. Okay. Verse 6, right? Wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Yasharal? You know what they was looking for? They was looking for what was set up in the prophets. They knew that the kingdom was going to be restored unto Yasharal, and they was wondering, are you going to do it now before you go? And he says, it's not for you to know the times or the seasons. It ain't for you to know it, because he knew a lot of time was going to transpire. It ain't for you to know that right now. You just go and be witnesses unto me. Guard these commandments. Let's go back. Yes. Oh, guard them means, you have to believe in them and you teach them. You teach them. So if somebody says, we're not under no 10 commandments. We don't believe in the commandments. We're not under no commandments. We're under, oh no, I'm a still teach them. I'm going to guard that, because we have to guard. He sealed it in his disciples. Yeah. He sealed it in his disciples. If it's not sealed in you, you're not his disciple. I don't care what title you have. I don't care what church you go to. I don't care. We're so caught up in titles and venues and sizes of churches and tenure. I said that right? Tenure of teachers and preachers, to where they can lie and you go right along with it. It was sealed in their disciples. He says, I'm gonna bind it up, I'm gonna seal it in you. So in Isaiah 8 and 20, in Isaiah, yeah. Yeah. Now, the prophets, when they spoke, even Isaiah, some of his prophecy was about the return, the first coming of the Mashiach, like it says in Isaiah, the 9th chapter. For unto you a child shall be born, a son shall be given. In Isaiah 9 and 6 and 7, it talks about his first coming, but it also talks about his second coming in verse number 7. 9 and 7 talks about his second coming, because in Yahuchanan, which is John, I think it's the 12th chapter, they said 12 verse 34, but he says, they asked him, who are you? Because when the Mashiach comes, his kingdom's going to last forever. You know? And so what they were referring to was Isaiah 9 and 7, because it says the end of his government and kingdom, what? No end. It's eternal. It's not going to end. So in Isaiah 9 and 6, he's prophesying of his first coming. Isaiah 9 and 7, he's prophesying of his second coming. Right there in one I think it's one sentence. Look at all the years he covers. That's prophecy. That's prophecy, because he wrote, 600 years before Messiah even came. So he talks about his first coming, then he talks about his second coming. Well, they witnessed his first coming. That's why when he was getting ready to leave, they said, wait a minute, you ain't done. I mean, are you going to do it now? Are you going to set up his kingdom now? He says, it's not for you to know that. Not at that time. So Isaiah prophesied, and he prophesied. There's many prophecies within Isaiah, a lot of prophecies. It's a matter of settling which ones has already been fulfilled and which ones are yet to be fulfilled. Yeah. Yeah. I got this from a scholar, a Hebrew scholar, Jewish scholar, whatever you want to call them. But, they had a thing called the School of Prophets. And so in the School of the Prophets, you had the prophets and stuff, but they had scribes. And people would write what the prophets would say. So it wasn't so much that he penned it with his own hand. It's more like he spoke it and scribes penned it. So when the scribes would pen it, those scrolls would just carry from generation to generation. They would have to rewrite some if it wasn't on stone. They would have to copy it and rewrite it, because what is that, papyrus or whatever? It only lasts so long, and it'll turn to dust. It'll just turn to dust. So they would have to copy it and rewrite it. Do you know who else had to write the law? Maybe not all 613 commandments, but the laws that they had to write, they had to pen them themselves with their own pen. You know who else had to do that? Shaul, yeah. But Shaul, which one? Who are you talking about? Oh, okay. Yeah, but going back to, the kings. The kings. Every time there was a king. And I want to show you guys something. I want to show you guys something, because Israel has really fallen. Man, they have fallen. Really have fallen. There's things that he meant for Israel and Israel to be kings in the kingdom of priests. There's things that he meant for Israel to be, and he prophesied on, and Israel's nowhere near that. Nowhere near it. And if you see some of this, it's going to wake up some people. it's because I want to show you even some footage and stuff when we get our equipment, get everything set up. I want to show you some stuff that will really pique your interest. We are many, not all, many of us are suffering from malnutrition. Spiritually and word, richness of word and spirit, which we take with us into our natural life. This ain't no hocus pocus. Poof, somebody puffs up and, there was things that was supposed to be taught to us, that was supposed to be handed down to us to where it was never supposed to be lost. Never. Never supposed to be lost. Huh? But because of what? Yeah. So I'm just going to drop this. There's things that kingdoms around the world are doing, and I'm talking about their throne and their royalty and stuff, that they get directly from Israel when they had their kingdom. And some of the things that King Daud set up, some of the things that King Solomon or Shaluma set up, some of it you still see in kingdoms around the world. They were the envy of all kingdoms. Israel was the envy of all kingdoms around the world. When you spoke of a kingdom, they was on top. Like Yahusha said, a city that sit on top of a hill can what? Cannot be hid. It cannot be hid. Even to this day, things that are being done in kingdoms, modern kingdoms today, they got it from Israel when they were known in the height of their beauty, their royalty worldwide. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Let me say a little bit more. Let me say a little bit more. I'll just say this, and you can do your own research, because we're supposed to be doing, I gave you a homework assignment anyway, see what egregore was, but nobody's come back to me with egregore. But you missed that class? Egregore. 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 I'll say this. Have you ever witnessed a coronation of a king or a queen? You ever witnessed that? It is. It is. It is. It is a sight to see. But the agenda and then what they have to swear to, they get directly from Israel. In the heyday of Israel, when Israel was a king, when Israel had a kingdom, do you know that even over in England, they had to know the law of England, and they would have to even write it. That was a part of their swearing in their coronation. And they got that from Israel, because the Israel kings were supposed to look at the law of Moses and be able to write it in their own penmanship. Because it meant something. If you wrote that down, he was trying to get it in your heart. Isn't that what King Daud said? Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might not sin against thee. We're not really sincere. I shouldn't say we're not. There's some who are very sincere, very sincere. But you have the multitudes that are just square dancing and hooping and hollering and everything. They're not really serious on this. When I was looking at some footage and some video clips and just looking at some stuff the other day, and I was just like, oh man, how far we've fallen. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness. Wow. Let me get back. Let me get back to this. Let's go back to Yahuchanan 14. And the question was asked, 14:22, Yahuchanan 14:22, he asked the question. He says, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself unto us, not unto the world? So you'll have some who will have the revelation and see it, but the world's not going to see it. So verse 23, Yahusha answered and said unto him, and it's so simple. It is so simple. And the devil, Satan, is so clever. He'll take something very simple. He can trip you up on something very simple and elementary. Very simple, elementary. He's about to answer the question of Yahusha being manifested unto his disciples, but not unto the world. So he answers the question. If a man love me, what is he going to do? He will keep my words. That's where the manifestation comes in. He will manifest himself unto you if you keep his words. And verse 15 of the same chapter says, if you love me, keep my. And he says in verse 23, if a man love me, which means he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him. So you want the manifestation of the Mashiach? You want the revelation of the Mashiach? You definitely don't get no revelation of the Mashiach throwing away the law. I mean, it's so simple. It's so simple. He says a wayfaring fool is not going to what? He's not going to err therein. It's that simple. It's not complicated. It's not mysterious. It's not hocus pocus. Ta-da! It ain't. I mean, it's nothing like that. It's simple. If you love me, keep my words. I mean, we can dance and shout that we're keeping his words. His statute, his commandments. I can dance off of that. Notice now, he says, we will come and make our abode with him. Deuteronomy 18 and verse number 18. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, like unto Moses. Now listen, this is the Most High speaking from heaven, telling Musha. Listen what he says. Because when Mashiach says, we will come and make our abode with you, and who's he talking about? Him and his Father. And he says, if you keep my words, who's going to love you? My Father's going to love you if you keep my words. We're going to come and make our abode. That's how, I'm trying to show you how he's manifested to his disciples, but not manifested to the world. The world says all of this is done away with. So people who believe that it's been done away with, they do not have the manifestation of the Mashiach or the Father, because then our Mashiach would not be telling the truth. I mean, a lot of people's got testimonies. You'd be surprised. I'm saved. I know I'm saved. We'll see. We'll see if you're saved. Because this is how he identifies his disciples. This is how he manifests himself to his disciples. So he says here, like unto thee, and he says in verse number 18, and will put my words where? In his mouth. So in the mouth of the Messiah, Yahushua Mashiach, yes. Yeah. This is the prophet. You have other prophets? Yeah, and those prophets lived and died, and they're waiting for the resurrection. This prophet lived and died and said, I am the resurrection. And got up out the grave. And he's coming back. Yes, he is. Notice now, he says, I'm going to put my words in his mouth. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of people, when they stand before him, he's going to ask them, why'd you do away with my words? Why did you teach men to break my commandments? Man, I tell you, I don't want to be in them shoes. I want to say I did everything in my ability to teach your commandments. That's what I want to say. Whether people follow them or not, you gave them to me, and that's what I'm going to teach. Doesn't mean everybody's going to follow them, but I have to teach it. Because he says, if you teach somebody to break the least of these commandments. Now, you don't hear that up in churches anymore. On the first day of the week, rising up for the sun. You don't hear them saying that. Well, y'all, you know, if you break the least of these commandments, you're going to be least in the kingdom. You don't hear that in churches. You don't hear that. But that's what our Messiah said. He shall speak unto them all, notice now, all that I shall command him. Now, if the Messiah did not speak the words of his Father, then you've got two, and he would not have said, we will come and make our abode with you. There has to be agreement between the Father and the Son. There must be. There has to be agreement. The words that he gave Musha, the same words he gave Yahusha. So when he says we will come and make our abode with him, what he's saying, and the Father, we're talking about the Father and the Son, what he's saying is that which the Father spoke and that which the Son spoke is to be where? In us. Has to be. That's how he's made. When we see that, we'll see his manifestation. Now, remember, Judas or Yehuda said, how are you going to manifest yourself to us, but the world can't see it? Because the world's already threw away the law. They threw it away. They'll say it in churches. You ain't under no law. Trust me. You ain't under no law. That's what they'll say. Okay, verse 19. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name. There's nothing different from what the Father said and what the Son said. There is no difference between what the Father said and what the Son said. The Son is speaking the Father's words. The Son taught him. You can't have no other gods before him. The Son taught that. And we probably don't see the fullness of that, but just as long as you know, every nation had a God. When you study ancient Near Eastern cultures and nations and stuff, every nation had a God. In fact, you could not be really a recognizable nation without a God. Now, just to throw this out there, take it how you want to take it, but the Khazarian Empire, which you can look it up and study, the Khazarian Empire had a god. They had an idol. And their idol was the phallic. That was their idol. And so as they began to conquer other nations and got so big, hey, we better change our God. This is not, I mean, we want to conquer the world with a phallic? No, we got to get another God. So this is history. All you got to do is study. So King Bulan converted the whole nation over to what? Judaism. The whole nation converted over to Judaism. That's in their history. So you have Khazarian Jews. They wanted to get off of that God that they had and get a different God. We got to get us a different God. Every nation has a God. Our present nation that we're living in has a God. They have a God. They even put it on their money, their currency. Right over that pyramid with the all-seeing eye, what did they say? In God we trust. I mean, this nation, we're going to witness the fall of this nation. We're going to witness the fall of this. And a lot of people say, oh, no, there ain't no way. United States of America is going to crumble and fall. Ain't no way. Wait and see. Wait and see. And you got some folks, and it's going to happen quick, and you got some folks that'll be crying, what happened? What happened to? There's no way they could have been destroyed so quickly in a day. You got folks, man, it's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. This nation's coming down. And there's going to be a lot of folks that's going to go down with it. And if you ain't a part of that remnant, you ain't even coming out. The only way you're going to get out is if you're a part of that remnant. Did we finish reading that in Isaiah 10? Did we finish reading that? I think, okay, maybe we did. We went to 20. Yeah, let's look at Isaiah 10 and 22. Because we read Isaiah 10, 20, and 21. And then he says in 22, for though thy people, Yasharal, be as the sand of the sea, only a remnant of them shall return. Just a remnant. And Israel is the sand of the sea spread all over. But he says only a remnant's going to return. You have some people that are so full of pride, they can't repent. They can't repent. I'm talking about leaders. You have leaders that got titles that's over large bodies of people, and they might even know the truth, or the light starts coming on, but they can't repent. Then you got some, they'll laugh at it. They'll laugh at this. You know, it was just hitting me hard last couple of days. How can you have the spirit of truth and not see the revealing that's coming? It's already in process. How can you say you have the spirit of truth, but you can't see it? And it's been said, oh, you're in a cult. But what is a cult? Isn't a cult short for what? Culture. We have a culture here. Cult is short for culture. What kind of culture do you have? If you don't have the right culture, you're in a cult. Huh? It depends on how you define it. But cult comes from culture. Usually when you think of cult, you think of people who are possessed by devils or demons. And into a culture that people don't agree with. I just don't agree with that culture. You know, so you could have somebody, you can have somebody that practice a different culture than this current nation that we're in, and they'll have a problem with that. Because we look at this nation as so pristine and so righteous and so holy that anything that's contrary to this culture that we're presently in, then there's something wrong with them. I mean, there's a lot of cultures in South America and Africa. They don't want no identity with the United States of America. They could care less. We don't, you guys keep that over there. But we look at them as, and the way we define them, and it's like, well, who are you to be so condescending on another culture? They just don't want to be like you. So just because they don't want to be like you, there's something wrong with them. And that's how we look at it. Because in this nation is so arrogant and so puffed up with pride. It's going to have a hard fall. It's going to have a hard fall. Yes. Egregore. You're on the right path. It's a national spirit, and I'll just give you a clue. I'll give you a clue on egregore. Huh? But you can give power to an egregore. No, okay, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Um, since I got the chauffeur here, we'll just use the chauffeur as an example. I can put this up here or any place really, and begin to pray to it, offer up prayers to it. I can set it apart. I can talk about the omnipotence of it. This thing has all power, and I can believe that to where I can use this as a instrument to get something done for me. The power that I give this is what an egregore is. So an egregore is something that you can idolize and you give it power. You can't say that the people who withstood Musha, remember it talks about those who withstood Musha and well, before them, when they were the magicians, when they were in Egypt, it said that they withstood Musha, what was it, Janus and Jambres, I think that's what it is. Those were the magicians in Egypt, and they had power. You can't say they didn't have no power. It wasn't power coming from the Most High Yah, but they had some power. You have somebody else in the New Testament, Simon the sorcerer. You have people that can take certain instruments or certain things or make an idol and pray unto it. And in your mind, it has power to where over time, that idol has power to where it's actually doing something. It could, I seen a example, and it's out there on YouTube, where there was an owl that came in the building, and it was up in the rafters, and these people were screaming and hollering and the songs and the music, and just so the owl went from one place to another, just trying to get out, but they had the door shut. They wouldn't let the owl out. They would not let the owl out. But they did all this screaming at it. They screamed at it. They said, you're gonna die and all this stuff. And they was, it was chaotic and everything. It's out there on YouTube. But after a while, and that owl was flying around trying to get out, after a while, that owl fell to the ground and died. Fell to the ground and died. That owl. They didn't shoot it with no arrow. They didn't shoot it with no BB gun or a gun. They didn't do that. You can give something power to where it can do miraculous things. And so whatever you give power to, and that becomes an idol, and it has power, that's an egregore. There's a lot of idol worshiping going on. A lot of idol worshiping. We don't realize some of the idols. I see it all the time. I don't have to leave apostolic Pentecost churches. I don't have to leave that. I see idols within. I see men with crosses that they put in their heart. A necklace and a cross they put in their heart. That's idolatry. Flat out idolatry. But we listen to these men and women and we put them up on pedestals, and then we see signs and wonders. And we say they got so much power. Okay, you better be careful. You'll make an egregore. Isn't that what he said? They'll show signs and wonders that if it's possible, they'll deceive the very elect. This is an age where we really should be teaching. And that's what he says, I'm going to give you shepherds that will feed you with knowledge and understanding. But instead, we have presentations and shows that are put on. You don't even think you've gone to church unless the music is blasting and blaring and folks jumping around and flipping and rolling and falling off the wall and jumping off the pews, and then the preacher is foaming at the mouth and spitting and stomping and sweating and jumping all over the place and and we think we had church. And folks go home and say, man, we had church. Well, what happened? It was so loud, I don't know, but we sure had church. You don't find that in the Bible. Okay, so Miriam, when they came out of Egypt, Miriam, what did she do? She made a song. They got the tambourines. They danced and shouted because they came out of Egypt. Now, did they do that every week? No. No, they didn't do that every week. Huh? He did. And when he did and they were brought out, that was a time to rejoice. He even said, when the angels in heaven rejoice off of one sinner, that what? We can have somebody go down and repent, baptize them here. Ain't nobody shouting and rejoicing. Folks sit back looking at you. Folks looking at their neighbor. I don't like that hat. I mean, you got all kind of stuff. Look at them shoes they got on. And you got somebody that repents in heaven. They rejoice off of one that repents. We can see one that repent go down in water. I'm not gonna tell you with that one. I mean, we got so much stuff going, it's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Miriam, when they came out of Egypt, they were rejoicing because they were delivered out of Egypt. And you have, and I gave that example about when one sinner repents, but there's many times where we gather together and assemble together, and he says, I'm going to give you shepherds that's going to feed you with knowledge and understanding. And so, because we're so trapped by music and charisma and everything, that's how we define church. We don't define church as receiving instruction, teaching, knowledge and understanding, so that when I walk out of here, I know how to live. I know how to present myself as a living sacrifice. We can't, it seems like every time we come together, you've got to be doing a dance. I mean, Most services have become presentations. And that's not how it's supposed to be. Because after they came out of Egypt and they did their dance and they shouted and they did that, then it was time to sit down and listen and learn how to treat one another. If we're not careful, we'll make egregores. If we're not careful. And that's when you get into idolatry. Basically, I mean, you get into idolatry. When you're dealing with egregores, you get into idolatry. This can become an idol. If I say this has power, that shofar, if I say it has power, and every time I blow it, I'm going to blow that shofar, and the music's going, the sound's going to go out and land on somebody's ears, and then they're going to open up their checkbook and see an additional $1,000 in the checking account. Now you be careful. You start to make an egregore out of that. I mean, I get so tired of people talking about, okay, seed offering. I don't even want to hear it. Just turn it off. Seed offering. Sow a seed. No, why don't you plant a tree? That's what I want to say sometimes. Why don't you go plant a tree? No, you got to sow a seed. No. What did it say? It said in I think Kepha says it, they make merchandise of you. They make merchandise of you. And I'm not going to sit, I ain't sitting through, there's stuff I just refuse to sit through anymore. There ain't no way, I mean, you're going to take 45 minutes to an hour to raise an offering? When we come through those doors, it should already be prepared in our heart what we're going to get. When we come through the doors, he says, as it is prepared in your heart, so give. So when I come through those doors, I've already got my offering made up. I know what I'm going to get. This is my offering. That ain't good enough. Maybe not to you, but it's good enough to me. And as I read this book, as I purposed didn't it say, as you purpose in your heart, so let him give. As his purpose in his heart, so let him give. That ain't enough. It better be. You better learn how to budget, brother, sister. Uh-oh, he's messing up. That's all right. That's all right. Because one thing I want to say, we need to prepare ourselves and our families. And I know for a long time, it was like, why are you saving up money? The rapture's going to come and you're going to leave all that money in the bank. Have you ever heard that? I have. Why are you saving that money? The rapture's going to come and all you're going to have all that money laid up in the bank. Somebody else going to spend it. And so we don't have the preparation for our families. Folks dying all the time. We don't teach generational wealth and how to pass it down to the next generation. They don't teach that in the church, and they should be teaching that. I don't want all your money. As you purpose in your heart, that's what you give. We just have to make it work. How many times have I raised a special offering? Y'all know. How many times have I done that? I want to have $1,000 Sunday where I give out $1,000. Every head of house. Boy, if I did that, the word would get around. It was $1,000 day. And every head of house got $1,000. Boy, that turned things upside down. No, but we should prepare our families. That is a responsibility. That's my responsibility to prepare my family and teach them so they can prepare their family and the generation after generation after generation. Y'all know the church stole more money and wealth from people as much as the government. Man, I'm getting in trouble. Man, I'm getting in trouble, y'all. Man, I'm getting in trouble. We better bring this to a close. But we need to watch out for our own. Shaul, the apostle Shaul, they call Paul. Was it Timothy or Titus? He told them that the widows are supposed to be taken care of by who? Their family first. The family is supposed to requite widows. Now, if they don't have any family, if they don't have any children or anything like that, then it falls on the church if they did what? If they were servants, if they washed the saints' feet, if they were servants. So if they were ministering to the saints, but they don't have no family now, then the church is to take care of them. Find that. Y'all guys find it. It's there. No, it's in Timothy or Titus. But huh? Yeah, but I think Shaul taught that, not James. Is it? Yeah, but yeah. Where is that at? Okay. Yes, 1 Timothy 5 and 10. Well, let's go up. Let's look at 1 Timothy 5 and 8. But 1 Timothy 5 and 8, but if any provide not for his own, especially for those of his own house, he's supposed to provide for his own and for his own house. If he hasn't done that, he's denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So when there's a man or woman in the house, you shouldn't be looking to the church to take care of you. You shouldn't be looking to the congregation to take care of you. You're supposed to take care of yourself. A man is supposed to provide for his own, which means everybody in your house. And he says, especially for those of his own house. Then verse number 9, let not a widow be taken into the number under 60 years old or 60, having been the wife of one man. So you're under 60 and you only been married once. Listen, well reported of, she's only been married once, well reported of for good works. If she have brought up children, if she has lodged strangers, if she has washed the saints' feet, if she have relieved the afflicted, if she have diligently followed every good work. Okay? Yeah. So dropping down to verse number 16. If any man or woman that believeth have widows, let them relieve them. So what it's talking about is if it says man or woman, if your mother is a widow, your father has died, your mother is a widow. So if any man or woman that believeth have widows, so that means you got somewhere in your family, probably your father or mother, probably your mother, because a widow's a, if your mother's alive but your father's not, it says, let them relieve them, and let not the church be charged. It shouldn't fall on the church, that it may relieve them that are widows indeed, that ain't got no family. So if you got somebody who was married to a husband all her life, that's all she had. She probably didn't have no kids, but she took care of the church. She washed the saints' feet, and she did all this work and everything, and she's truly a widow, and she dies, then the church should take care of it. But if there's family, then the family's supposed to take care of it. That's what it says here. Don't let the church be charged. So what we should be doing for all these generations, we should have taught our children, and we should have learned how to be wise master builders. To where we know how to build our family. Have something to give to your kids, so that when you go off on the sea, your children inherit what you have. Where do they get that from? From Israel. That's what they did in Israel. Once he gave them that inheritance, it was supposed to stay in that family, in that tribe. Now, some folks fell on hard times and they had to sell what they have, but after 7 years, they had a right to get it back. And then at Jubilee, if they were enslaved or something like that, at Jubilee, they had their freedom and everything was supposed to be given back, if I'm correct. Somebody might be able to check that out on me. I think I'm correct. I don't know. But I know at Jubilee time, that 50 year, then it was supposed to be restored to them. So you might have lost everything. Economy got bad. We see examples where famines came in. People fell on hardship. They had to sell all they had. They might have to sell their inheritance, sell their land. But at Jubilee time, they were supposed to get that back, because that land inheritance was supposed to stay in that family, in that tribe. Supposed to stay there. That's why men wanted to have sons. I get to pass it down to my son. Because if I have daughters, the daughters would go off and get married. Sons, I keep, it stays within my family. This inheritance doesn't leave the family. This land does not leave the family. So as wise master builders, we should have been building something all of our life. Our fathers should have taught us. And then we teach our sons. So what my father has left me, then I want to leave something to my son and teach them. They leave something to their son. You build that generational wealth. Don't let nobody steal that from you. That belongs to your family. Give it all to the church. You better not. You better keep that in your family and pass it down in your family. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. Now, y'all can give it all to the church if you want. I ain't going to say no, but what we should be doing is learning how to build generational wealth. Yeah. If your kids are well taken care of and you've taught them to build, they're gonna take care of you. Don't you know they're gonna take care of you? When it's your time to go, your kids will take care of you, and everything that you have, they inherit, and they learn to build that up, and it just keeps going to the next generation. We should have been building generational wealth long time ago. Long time ago. I don't believe in that, taking everybody's wealth, taking everybody's money. I don't believe in that. I don't. Mm-mm. You purpose in your heart what you're supposed to give. You meet the Most High. You purpose in your heart what you're going to give, and then that obedience, you stay in obedience with Him. Now, if He tells you to give something and then you override it, like Ananias and Sapphira, and then lie about it, well, that can get you cut off. That can get you cut off. You know, and if you pledge or make a vow, He expects you to what? Keep that vow. Whatever you vowed, He expects you to keep that vow. You got some folks that went back on their vow, and well, He's going to hold you to that vow. That's why when you enter into His house, let your words be few. Be more willing to listen than to speak. Don't let your mouth cause your flesh to sin. Because when you make a vow unto Him, I mean, if you make a vow like, you give me this job, I get this job, I'm going to pay all my tithes, my offerings, I'm going to give it all to you. I ain't going to shortchange you at all. And you make that vow, He expects you to keep that vow. He expects you to keep it. So then people will quit that job. Whew. I quit that job because I know what I said. Now I'm going to get another one now. I'm going to let my words be few. I'm going to give as I'm able to give. Because when you make a vow, He expects you to keep it. Oh man, my time is up. All right. There was we can look at in Deuteronomy 14 and 28, Deuteronomy 26 and 12, and look at those scriptures when you got some time. And I think that's dealing with the Jubilee, I think. Or Deuteronomy 14 is dealing with that's dealing with I don't think that's dealing with Jubilee. This is Deuteronomy 14 is dealing with what is clean and unclean and tithes, that whole chapter. But one of these times, there's some subjects I want to talk on, and one of them is tithing, so that we can see the difference between the Melchizedek tithing and the Levitical tithing. Those are two different things. The Melchizedek tithing and Levitical priesthood tithing is two different things. You can't bring those together, because the Levitical tithing was different than the Melchizedek tithing. What was the Levitical tithing? Anybody know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was it. And that Levitical tithing came in when they became a nation. But before they became a nation, what kind of tithing did they have? The Melchizedek tithing through their father Abraham. Because when Abraham seen Melchizedek or Melchizedek, when he seen him, what did he do? Gave him what? Gave him tithe of all. And he was not a farmer. He was not into vegetation, because he was a nomad. His instruction was, get out of there, and everywhere you set your foot, what? I'm going to give that to. So Abraham was on the move. He was nomadic. He was on the move. He didn't have vegetation. He didn't have no time. He couldn't stay somewhere and plant the seed and have vegetation. And I mean, the first year you don't hardly get anything off of it, and then you have to plant it again and all those seeds. Then you have to be there for the harvest and all. He was moving. He was nomadic. He wasn't like that. But it does say in Genesis 14 or Genesis 13, all the silver and gold that he had and all his possessions and everything. So when he seen the priest of the Most High, well, then he gave him, that's the Abraham tithing unto the Most High, the priest of the Most High, which is different than the Levitical tithing, because the Levitical tithing was there to take care of who? The priests, the Levites. They didn't have an inheritance. So the Levitical tithing was there to take care of the Levitical tribe because they didn't have an inheritance. So they had to take care of that priesthood. They had to give them food, grain, all those cattle. They get the leather off of that. They'd be dressed nice in leather, and I mean, just all kind of stuff. We're under the Melchizedek. He's our high priest. We're not under the Levitical high priest. Our high priest is Yahushua Mashiach, which is after the order of who? Melchizedek. You would really, you're supposed to give it to the Levites, but if you can't prove that you're a Levite, that the Levitical tithing, what I just said, the Levitical tithing goes to who? The Levitical priesthood, the Levites. That's the Levitical, listen, the Levitical tithing went to the Levites. That's how they set up the nation. But that tithing is different than the Abraham tithing that he gave unto Melchizedek, because Abraham was not a farmer. So Abraham did not give any grains because he was not a farmer, but he had silver and gold. He had livestock. He had a lot of stuff because he had, I think, 300, 400 that was in his house. He had to take care of them because somebody might be able to correct me on that number, but he had a number of people in his house that he had to take care of. And then when he went places, they would even give him servants. Hagar was one of them. Hagar was given to him as a servant. And he gave it to Sarah. Abraham gave Hagar, who was given to him, he gave it to Sarah as her handmaid, just to take care of her and everything. And we know what happened there. But wherever Abraham went, he gathered, he collected a lot of stuff. But he was not a farmer. He was not a farmer. He was not a farmer. So, but the principle was established. It's a principle that was established with Abraham. It was a principle. Because our book is principle truth. So, okay, all right. All right, so anybody got any questions or comments or anything? We will be back on the Shabbat teaching, offering up our service unto him on the Shabbat. So we're going to say good night, shalom to all. Thank you for coming in, being a part of this class, this teaching. And our prayers are going up for each and every one of you. And we invite you back at the right time, which would be on the Shabbat. We'll come back then. So with that, we're going to say shalom, grace and mercy, peace unto all.